Hello and welcome to my video lecture on how to use the database PHP file in your PHP project to set up your pipe to go back to your MySQL database. So here we have our database PHP file. It is going to include our database error PHP file in case we throw an error, and that was covered in the previous video. And now what we want to do is we want to test that by including that in our index file. Here we have an index HTML file, which is what we've been using up until now. It looks just like this, and this is with my information, not my personal information, but my information in there. And what we want to do is we actually want to change this. My browser window is going to crash because this isn't going to work. Once I change the name, because this is referencing index.html, and in order for this file to reference a PHP file, I have to use PHP code, so this can't be an HTML file anymore. So I'm going to close that, and I'm going to click on the index.html file. I'm going to right click, going to go down to the file's properties. There's a refactor and renaming, but that's really for changing the name and having it propagate through the rest of the project, which is not what I want to do. I actually need to go to the properties because I want to change the file extension. So I want to change the file extension from HTML, and I don't really need that dialog box. I can pretty much do that on my own. And I'm going to change it to PHP, and I'm going to click close. So now I have an index.php file, and now that I have an index.php file, I can enter some PHP code in here. So I'm going to start off my PHP code. I'm going to put in my end tag. And then what I want to do here is I want to use an include to include my database PHP file. So I'm going to, and actually I don't want to do an include because an include would be somewhat not exactly strict. So if there was any kind of a problem, it wouldn't actually throw an error. So I want to do a require once. And I want to require my database.php file. So what is that going to do? When this file runs, we're going to call our database PHP file. Database PHP file is going to try to set up our connection to our database. If that fails for whatever reason, we are going to get an error message, which is going to cause this file to run. So let's start off trying to get our browser to run this file. We're going to save everything, and I'll right click, I'll click run, so we start up a new page. Now the fact that this page opened up with no problems, this is my index.php file, means that I now have a connection open to my database, my first database, which is right here. So that all worked, which is good. What I want to try to do is just show you what would happen if it didn't work. Which happens, right? So we want to see what's going to happen. So I'm going to open up my database PHP file, and I'm going to spell my user's name wrong. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go back out to my browser, and I'm going to refresh this. And you can see what happens when that occurs. So I'm still in my index.php file, right? But instead, what has happened is the error has been thrown. So because the error has been thrown, this included the database error PHP file. Here's my database error PHP file. My title is my first header says my second header says database error, and then I've got my error message that says the PHP error message. And you can see how that gets displayed. So here's my first, here's my database error. So there was an error connected to the database must be installed, MySQL. And then this is actually what was returned by the PDO exception get message function. So it says the SQL state, access denied for user, and it basically says that it doesn't even give you the user, just says that the user was bad. Now, what we see here is that in the database file, we have an exit. And the fact that it exits means that the rest of the index file doesn't run, because remember, this is happening up here. Right, so up at the beginning of this file, we're going to do a require once. We're going to try the database. If that doesn't happen, this is going to display. This is going to display due to the include, and then it exits so that the rest of this file doesn't run. So if we get rid of this, and we save this, then we go back and we refresh this. Now you can see that here's what the include does. So the include puts this up in here, and then without the exit, the rest of my form appears. Because we're in the index.php file, we haven't left that file. That file is including other HTML and other PHP, which is being included in here. So that concludes my video on how to process and use an exception from the PHP, the PDO exception when you're trying to connect to the database. If everything works fine, again, I'll put my exit back in here because that's really the way I want it to work. I'll go back into my database PHP file. I'll spell that correctly. I'll save that, go back to my browser window, refresh that. And now I know in the background, since the error hasn't been kicked, the exception has been thrown, that I now have a good connection to my database and I can use it for a variety of purposes, to insert data, delete data, update data, whatever I want to do in that database, which we will get to in subsequent videos. But for now, that's the end of my video on how to use the PDO exception. And now that you know how to use it, I want to see you use it in your code.